Hello, I'm very excited to have the lovely Luca with me. Hi, Luca. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks very much for having me. I'm Luca Veste. I'm a crime writer from Liverpool, the author of 8 novels, the latest being You Never Said Goodbye. I did 4 books in the Murphy and Rossi series before writing a bunch of standalones.
Did you always know that you wanted to be a writer?
Not at all. So I grew up and pretty much still live next to it. A council estate in Merseyside, various council estates in Merseyside. And I was always quite lucky in that we had really good local libraries. So I was a voracious reader as a kid because it was like the only form of entertainment, basically, because we had one of those tellies where you had to put a pound in and you got like 8 hours. And like my dad would like go, all the kids are going to bed at like 8, 9 o'clock. So I need at least 4 of them to myself. So during the day we were kind of left to our own devices. And I discovered the library, so I was a massive reader as a kid. So I went through like, Enid Blyton and the usual stuff as you read on a kid. Even the Mallory Towers series, like I loved those. I didn't know what a boarding school was, but it sounded amazing to me that you had like midnight feasts and things like that. That just I was like food at 12 o'clock midnight. That's brilliant. Um, but when I got to about 14, I stopped reading. And found other stuff. I wanted to be a footballer. I wanted to be a boxer. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be a singer. I wanted to be a guitarist. I wanted to be in bands. And I tried all of those things, failed miserably at all of them, um, and just fell into work in my 20s. I had 2 kids, got married, and someone gave me Mark Billingham's first book, Sleepyhead. I said, You'll like that. That's quite dark. You'll like that." And I was like, "Oh, right, okay." So I started reading that, and I was like, "Oh, I remember this feeling of like losing yourself in another world." But it wasn't until I was like late 20s, I got made redundant and went to university. And from where I come from, it's like that was like ridiculous. We didn't go to university. We barely went to school, never mind university. Um, and I started conversing with writers over social media. I'd read their books and I'd find them on social media. And I wanted to kind of give something back. So I started reviewing books online. And this isn't like 2010, 2011 when, there was not that many blogs around. Now there's hundreds of them. But back then there wasn't that many. So I was very early on in that kind of explosion of blogs and things like that, where I would review books. And I still at that point never had any intention of writing. I thought that's what other people did, and we weren't allowed to do that. Um, so I got into a late night conversation with a writer called Charlie Williams, and it was like a jokey conversation about vampires of all things. Where I was saying like, you all these vampires that are in fiction, they're always like nicely dressed and all suave and all that type of thing. You never hear about Jeff, the uninspired vampire who doesn't want to do anything, just wants to watch Jeremy Kyle or Maury Povich and all that. And Charlie went, "You should write that." And a drink had been taken, and I woke up the next morning to a message from Charlie saying, "What's this, mate?" And what I'd done at 3 o'clock in the morning was written a 600-word short story about Jeff, the uninspired vampire. So I was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I've done this." So I was like, "I'm really sorry." And he was like, "No, no, it's fine. It's funny. It's like, what else have you been writing in that?" And I was like, "I haven't written anything. I won't do it again." He's like, "No, no, no. You should do this. You should write this. You've got something there. You got a storytelling ability." So I wrote. I did. I went, okay. So I wrote a few more short stories, and then like after I'd done a fair few, I thought, well, the next thing is to write a novel. And this is during my first year of being a student, 28 years old, mature students. Every other student's like 10 years younger than you, and you're like, you've got 2 kids, and like, and it's like, oh well, I'm not going out every night with all the other students, so I had a lot of time in my hand. So I started writing a novel, and it got me an agent, and then I got a publishing deal. This is all within the space of like a year, 14 months. Um, so the first novel, Dead Gone, came out in my second year at university, um, and yeah, it's been full time ever since then.
What did you study at uni?
Criminology and psychology.
Uh,
I had all these ideas, these plans to become a forensic psychologist. I was going to work in the prison service and with criminals and all that type of thing, and that kind of fell apart like everything else I tried to do except for writing. Which
did
is
you
why I
finish it
think
though?
this is the one thing I was supposed to do, was the only thing that's kind of lasted. Because I had a huge range of jobs growing up, and I kind of fell into the civil service and did that for 6 years. But once I was made redundant, my wife was like, "Listen, you should have gone to university when you were younger. You should have been pushed to do it. Try it, just try it." So I did an access course, and I did that for a year, and was actually really good. I didn't realize, like, I could actually do that kind of thing. But writing essays and all that type of thing kind of was, and it was like, the basis of me becoming a writer is that I kind of found a love of words during that, of actually writing them down. Um, and it all stems back from those libraries on the council estates of my youth, of like just reading everything I could get hold of. Um, and having really good librarians who turned a blind eye to 10-year-old Luca going and finding Stephen King books and taking them out. They were much more happy that I was taking the books out rather than smashing windows to get into the library, I think was the thing. So yeah, it was yeah, it's been a really interesting ride, to becoming a full-time writer. But yeah, I couldn't think of anything doing anything else now.
Did you finish your degree?
Yeah, so yeah, I didn't do very well, because by the third year, it's like I was a published writer. I signed a new contract on like the week before my last two exams, which I knew would mean that will be it then. I'll be a writer forever. So I didn't really try, because I was like, well, I'm not going to become a psychologist or anything like that. Probably should have done as a backup option, but I was like, nah. But it's given me a great like standing of, like, a great basis to work from, writing crime, especially, of like, I haven't studied that for 3 years, but I'm much happier being a writer than dealing with criminals every day, for example, like, or having to listen to other people's problems. Now I just create them and make them up myself, and have to deal with them with made up people.
Yeah, it's so weird. Your story kind of, mine mirrors yours a little bit. I worked at a job for 14 years and then got fired. And I always swore that when I left that job in whatever form, I would go back to uni. But I was in my mid-30s and I studied forensic science.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've literally just passed in the last 2 weeks.
Oh,
And then when I was doing my dissertation, well, actually, I think in my second year, I started blogging and reviewing books. And then when I was supposed to be writing my dissertation, I wrote a short, like novella horror, like the old point horror books.
oh,
So,
point horror.
yeah.
Oh, that's one of my favorite things, was point horror, the R.L. Stein kind of thing. I've still got one of them that I had as a child. Is it near me? No, it's not. Oh, that's a shame. But it was like my favorite thing. It was like a collection of short stories of like, and then Christopher Pike, was it? Christopher Pike. And yeah, I love those books. I love the point horror stuff. And I think that was the gateway. That was like me little, but didn't go straight from Enid Blyton to Stephen King. I think that would have been too much of a jump. But I think I went from Enid Blyton to point horror to Stephen King in a very short space of time. And that's why, like, I mean, like, that horror was my first love, like, as a kid. And like, I remember when I got that Mark Billingham book given to me, in the same week my auntie gave me a big box of Stephen King books, which are still up there. There's loads of them up there. Uh, and it was like, a real rekindling of like love. And it was always, it was a decision I had to make very early on, whether I was going to write crime or write horror. And I think it was just the books that I was reading at that point. I was reading every kind of crime novel I could get my hands on, because I'd read so much horror when I was younger. And this was like, well, this is a new thing, so I'm gonna read all of these. And I ended up writing crime, but like with the Bone Keeper, for example, which is a very much a crime horror crossover. That was my fifth book. That's probably about as close as I'll get to writing a horror novel for a while. But it was a lot of fun doing. Is that like kind of what goes bump in the night type of feeling? It's like is this real? Is this not? It's that kind of thing. I love that. Yeah, but yeah, Point Horror. That's a blast from the past.
Yeah, I tried to get some because I thought I'd try and read them again to try and write something like it, and they're really expensive.
Yeah, yeah. I've got I've got this one book that I kept from because I had very few books when I was a kid. Because they were free from the library, so it was like I didn't have to actually have any. So I kept that, and I've got a couple of famous five books, and that's about it. From like, so when I was 24, 25, there was about three books in the house. Now I've got thousands because that's where I spent all my money basically when I was an adult. That and sweets.
Do you have a favourite Stephen King book?
The Stand. It's the Stand is my favorite novel of all time. I read that when I was 11 and could not. Basically, what happened was there was very few books in the house, but my dad did have the complete and uncut version of The Stand from 1991, which is there, that book there. Um, and it was in me where my dad sat. There was like a little side table next to him, and it was lived underneath this big massive book. So I read everything I could get my hands on, and I wanted to read that book. So at 9 years of age, I'm saying to my dad, I want to read that book, and he's like, no, you can't read that book. He's worried about social services knocking on the door, like. Um, so I made it like my goal, and then one day he just I don't think he was listening properly, and I just went, I want to read that book, Dad, and he was like, yeah, go on then, and I just took it upstairs, and honestly, that's like God, nearly 30 years ago now, and no novel has ever matched the experience I had reading that book for the first time. Where I just realised what fiction could do. What a story could do to someone when they're reading it just on their own. And I reread it again about a year and a half ago because every few years I'll read it again. Same feeling, same feeling. Every character leaps off the page. Every moment is just like, even though you know what's going to happen, you're still like kind of holding your breath. So it's probably not the greatest book anyone will ever put on their list. It's not like gonna ever win like that kind of like list. But for me, I think every book is an experience for the reader, and I don't think anyone can ever kind of replace that by just saying, well, this is actually the greatest book that's ever been written. This is the greatest writing you'll ever read. This is the best writing, the most technically best writing. It doesn't matter if it doesn't jive with the reader. It's still not going to give you that experience that you have on your own, just sitting there reading, because it's a very solitary activity. And yeah, The Stand is my favorite novel of all time because of that.
Yeah, 11/22/63 beats it for me. I love that book so much.
That's a good one. Like, I mean, I think that was like, because that came out. What God, that must have been like 10 years ago now. 11,
Must
20.
be, yeah, it must be something like that.
And I think because I read. It's still one of the very few authors I will buy on release day and read that day. And that felt like a real. That's another stand. It was like, so it's very much up there for me. But yeah, it's I mean, I even read that Cell book that he did, which was just weird, and still loved it. So I do love pretty much everything he writes. But yeah, he is like just on a shelf on his own. I mean, like like these are all in alphabetical order, except for Stephen King, who gets his own shelf.
I think I've got, up until a point, I've got all of his books, and I think I've got three shelves that are double layered because he's got so many. Yeah, it's insane.
It is amazing when you think it must be closing in on 50 years now since Carrie was published. And the amount of words that he's written, it's like, it is, when you look at it as a writer, you think like that's what the goal is, but it's also really intimidating of like that many stories. He's had that many stories and that many ideas, and that can be intimidating. I take it as a challenge, as to, okay, I need to come up with that many ideas. I need to do that as well. I need to have that kind of length, because Luca's got rent to pay, so he has to make sure that he does You know, have that many.
And did you see him at Bloody Scotland?
Now, I think what were we doing at that point? I think we were doing some. The band was doing something or other. I can't remember why we missed it, but I have seen him talk if he's talking, I'm listening. So I watched it just after that happened. I watched it. I thought,
Yeah, and the fact that he says every time, even now that he sends a book to his editor, he thinks he's going to come back and say, "What is this shit?
yeah,
What have you given me?" I'm like, "What? Oh my god!" I sat there and was just gobsmacked. It was unbelievable.
that was one of the biggest surprises for me as a writer. So there was, when I was getting back into reading in my 20s, I read like Mark Billingham and I read Ian Rankin. I went throughout his whole series. Val McDermid went throughout the whole series, and I went through all of these amazing novelists. Then later became friends with them, and I always thought that like these people were very relaxed about it all. And it's like, yes, I'll take a couple of months and I'll write the next bestseller, and everything is fine. But you actually talk to them, and they all feel exactly the same way. The best ones do anyway. Is that they all have the fear which is inherent. It's in every writer that wants to push themselves. Of this next book might be my last, and so I need to make it better than the one I just wrote. And like that is kind of the driving force for me with every book. Still, is that I'm still waiting for that tap on the shoulder where they go like, "Sorry, we made a mistake. We like we didn't realize we you were doing this." So like that's it out. But that I remember like having a conversation with Val where it's like, when does it get easier, Val? And she went, "If you're lucky, it never does." Because that's what makes us that's what makes you get out of bed and do the work and write the best book possible. And you may not always do that, but at least you're trying with everyone. And that's why it makes sense to me that like Val is like I think 30 odd years now being a writer. Writes 1979 last year, which was one of my favorite books of last year by a distance. It was incredible, and it's because she still has that love and that drive and that fear to keep going and writing the best books she can.
Yeah, I've tried to speak to her twice at festivals, and she's blanked me twice.
That's surprising that because Val is actually one of the nicest people I've ever met.
I know that's what I've heard, but
Yeah.
twice. So I'm like, I won't give up. I will.
I
I
will,
will
I
try to
will
speak to her.
say this is Donna and she's a lovely person and you've got to speak to her Val and she go, okay, no problem, son.
Thank you. So your book. If you were to take out one of your characters for a meal, who would you choose and what would you ask them?
Oh, it's difficult because most of the characters that are in my books are pretty much based on people I know or have experienced. So it would have to be someone who I didn't usually see. So like in You Never Say Goodbye, for instance, the main character is very much based on personal experience, and so it's a lot of me in him. Um, so I think it would have to go. I'd have to go with a serial killer, and I think it would have to go with Alan Bimpson from The Dying Place because he's an amalgamation of a couple of people that I know, but turned up to the extreme. Dying Place was based on an idea, based on a conversation I've been having with my dad for 30 years, where he's very much like, a nice person, but he has this very extreme view when it comes to um, basically teenagers who are tearaways. So I remember just before I was writing that book, um, he'd had some issues with some kids around the corner. And he said, I tell you what, Luca, what we need to do is we need to get in a van, all the old school lads, like meaning like 50-year-old men, and, and get in a van, pick them all up, beat them up, and put them back on the street. And I was like, I don't think that would work, though, Dad. And he's like, no, they'd never do anything again. I was like, I honestly don't think that would work. And we've been having the same argument for 30 years. And I ended up writing that story about that idea of like a guy who gets like-minded individuals to pick up young men who were getting into trouble and inflicting violence on them and hoping that would stop them inflicting violence on other people. And like there's still some people, like a lot of people who read that book who who disagreed with the conclusions or how far they would go. A lot of people who agreed with the actions of the antagonist and like the who were like, "This is great. This is it's about time someone wrote exactly what we should do." And I'm like, "Oh God, I've written a manifesto. What have I done?" But the character in that, Alan Bimson character in that is interesting just psychologically, just to talk to that kind of person of just like what drives you to want to do this. Why aren't you happy just having a life where you're not bothered by what other people do? You're not influenced by the actions of others, even if they're bad. Even if they're not good actions. Is that you feel strongly enough about this that you want to do something about it, but why does it have to be what they're doing? Why is it just matching what they're doing? So someone like that probably would be who I'd like to. And I think that would be one of the. That's is like why, why? But it's
Yeah.
difficult to answer because as much as I remember certain aspects of a lot of books, once I've written a book, it's kind of I have to kind of leave it to one side when I'm writing the next one. So I tend to forget, which is always difficult when I'm doing events and stuff like that, promoting new books, because I have to go back and remember what those books were about because it's been a year since I've looked at them. So yeah, so I finished. Thankfully, you never said goodbye. I only finished 5 months ago, so it's still quite fresh. Um, but like there has been times where I think it was the six, which was funnily enough the sixth book. Um, I'd written that book, and then 2 years passed before I was talking about it. I had absolutely no idea what it was about. I couldn't remember. I had to go back and read it, which is an experience for a writer reading their own stuff 2 years later. You go, oh no, I need to change. Is it too late to go down into? But yeah, it's so I forget like certain character names and things like that. Um, so like yeah, usually like people would like I would like to take my main character, my main my detective out for a meal and ask them like what drives you and all that. But I'm not in, I'm more much more interested. And I think this is why I studied psychology and things like that. I'm much more interested in the characters who you you don't always know a lot about. By the end of book four, you kind of know what Murphy and Rossi are about, who they are, who what they're like as people. Whereas they're antagonists of those books, there's still things that you need to find out about them, and that's where I find most interest.
Do you hide secret jokes or messages or Easter eggs in your books?
Yes, all the time. Um, so I will use. I have to be very careful here because legally you're not supposed to do this. But I will use certain kinds of lyrics and songs. I listen to music when I'm writing, and I have like a playlist of like 500 songs, and they range from Pink Floyd to Stormzy. It's very eclectic, and I will hear a lyric and I'll go, "Oh, it'd be funny to put that in there," and then I just rewrite it a little bit, so then I don't have to, get a clearance. So there'll be things like that. There's also silly things that only make sense to like my wife who doesn't read my books because she's not a crime fan at all. She's much more a fan of romance novels and history. That's what her book. So I will write things that if at any point she reads them in the future, she'll go, "Oh my God, I can't believe he did that." So it'll be things like um, if a character's having a drink, invariably it'll be a drink that someone I know has, and that's down to like the brand name type of thing and all that. If they are ordering a takeaway, they'll order something that someone I know orders, every time. If they're talking about a show on television, I will mirror their opinion on from someone I know. But it's down to even little things. So in my first novel, we had a big group of friends, and Guy and Carla were together, and Andy and Amy were together in real life. In my book, Andy and Carla were together, And I thought that'd be hilarious because the idea of them two being together in real life is ridiculous. But in my book, it'd be hilarious. So like that's the kind of thing that I do. I'll use character names and things like that. But I mean, I do loads of stuff because you have to keep it interesting because it's when you sit down at the beginning of every morning and you just got a blank page, you got to do something to get you through the day. So like I've done like Alan Bimson, for example, the character I was mentioning earlier. My dad's called Alan, and his best mate, who was very much on the same page as him with the big van and the getting all the lads and throwing them in the back of the van, his best mate was called Phil Bimson. So that became Alan Bimson. So they would love that. They thought it was great. They thought that was it for them. I've run out of names basically now. I've used everyone, so now there's far fewer now being used. But like I used a nephew's name in the last book. I've used I'm one of 9 kids. All of their names, all my brothers and sisters, all of their names have been used in the past. The only people who I don't use are my wife and my kids' names because invariably something bad happens to characters in my book. I can't do that to my wife and kids.
Let's just hope that they don't piss you off one day and you're like, this is the day.
That's said to me quite a lot. Is like, oh, you'll be able to use this for the book. It's like a lot of the time, it's like just for certain incidents. Like, well, how am I going to shoehorn that into a novel about a serial killer or it's just like someone getting cut off on the motorway? How am I supposed to use that? It's like we were coming out, we were driving a couple of months back, and we were on Scotland Road in Liverpool, and there was a car that kind of like moved up around, couldn't get in to a one lane thing. So it was 2 lanes moving into 1 lane. He was trying to get past, and this guy wouldn't let him in. So he pulls in behind him. We get to some traffic lights, and this guy bounces out the car and starts shouting at the driver. His own fault. Like, it was his own fault. He was trying to force his way in, but no. In his head, he was in the right. Starts screaming at the driver, who pulled off basically and just went. And we were telling the story to someone, and they were like, that'll be in Luca's book next year. And I was like, how am I gonna? What's the? It's like, how am I gonna get that into a book where it's like, so like that was when I was writing You Never Said Goodbye, and I was like, how am I supposed to shoot that into a book about a guy who's trying to find the truth about his mother dying? It's like, it would just be a really random event. But saying that, there's tons of things that I have used from real life. It's like, but it's usually like not the things that you would imagine. It's not those things that like, like that kind of, confrontation or anything like that. It's usually just even minor things. Like I used to spend an enormous amount, this is before COVID, I used to spend a lot of time going around on buses in Liverpool and just listening to people talking. And just getting the rhythms of conversations and things that people would talk about. And then I would just throw little snippets in here and there. When I went to America to research You Never Said Goodbye, I literally sat in diners and would write down everything people were saying on the table behind me. And wouldn't use what they were saying more than it was just how they would say it, and how my observations of how they talk to each other and things like that. So yeah, it's not always like, oh, you'll use that in the book. It doesn't always say now, but I might. Which makes it a little bit more difficult at like Christmas and Christmas dinner, like where it's like, I'm telling you a story, don't use this in a book. Is like usually
Get your secret notepad out underneath.
Yeah.
If you were to kill someone fictionally or hypothetically, I guess, as you, not as a writer, how would you do it?
It's incredibly difficult now to kill someone without being found out. It's why we have far fewer serial killers than we used to, I think. Is that I remember writing my first novel and thinking, right, it's perfect. This place where he's placed this body is perfect. It's on the Albert Dock. There's no cameras. Everything's fine. He's never going to be seen. And 6 months later, the week before the book comes out, just happened to be down at the Albert Dock, and I looked up and there was a camera there. I was like, oh, for God's sake. So, like, it's very difficult to kill someone without being found, which is something that would be, highly motivating for me, is to not be caught That would be the reason why I would do it. So I've honestly never thought about how I would kill someone because I've never had the I've never thought about like I've always thought about the consequences if I lost my temper. That's what it would be. It's like, and I don't. I'm quite easygoing, but I'm quite quick tempered as well. So like, if I had to change my entire makeup when I had children because I remember one time just walking through a shopping centre, and someone dropped. I had a football in a bag, and I was shifting the bags or something, and the ball fell out, and some guy nearly tripped over it, and he swore at me, and I saw red for no reason. I mean, like it's just one of those things where it's just like, oh, sorry, mate, that would saw red, and it's like that. You can't get into those situations when you're like you've got kids and stuff like that, especially if they're with you. So like, I've kind of like tempered down, so all of my kind of killer instincts go into the books. Um, So I don't ever think about like how it kills someone. I quite like the whole um stabbing someone with an icicle because then it's like it melts and the murder weapon's gone. But I think if it actually was to do it, it'd be something where I've just lost my temper at some guy in middle of town. Just repeatedly going, you will listen to it. Oh God, he's gone. Yeah, so I don't. Yeah, it's an interesting one because crime writers especially, we write about killing people constantly. We're also the nicest people you'll probably ever meet because we do get everything else on the page. All our darkness is on those pages. Everything you want to know about us is in those books. It's like that's the things they think about at late at night. Um, so you meet us at festivals and things like that, and we're all like, "Hello, you're right." We actually meet romance writers, and they are dark. That's not true. That's not true. They're all getting a nice, happy life out on the pages, and then it's like, but really, I'm this. No, that's not true. But yeah, it's very difficult to imagine where I would be in a situation where I would even have to worry about that kind of thing. I've not been in a fight for years.
Yeah, it's funny though because pretty much every crime writer I know doesn't have to think about it for long. They're like, oh yeah, I'll do that. All right then.
See, these people are much more on the edge than I am. I'm quite relaxed because I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be doing this because like everyone I grew up with, all my mates from school are either unemployed, in prison, or doing work that they don't get paid properly for. Like, it's like that kind of thing. This shouldn't be happening. So I'm incredibly relaxed because I'm like, if this all ends tomorrow, then like, God, at least I got 10 years out of it. I want 10 more and 10 more after that. That's the fear that keeps me going to the computer every day to write the next book. But I'm very relaxed about my life. Like this is incredible to me. This is ridiculous. I grew up thinking that writers all lived in castles and they were all very posh, and it just turned out that everyone who worked in publishing was posh and not the writers themselves. But to be
Yeah.
honest, to me, anyone who doesn't sound like me sounds posh. So it's great. Anyone who has their own house is posh. Anyone who speaks properly out of their posh. It's ridiculous. But like yeah, it's not something I ever think about now. It's great. Not worrying about it. Like I boxed for years. That was a violent thing to be involved in, but it was all controlled. I got into massive trouble when I was a kid. But it's like someone else. It's like someone else did that. This is a different person. But to answer your question, I wouldn't kill once. I'd kill many, many times until they caught me.
See, someone asked me this question, and I'm the same. I'm very placid, except for at work. I work in retail, so people are dicks, especially in retail, and that makes me see red frequently. But I said I'd stab someone 100 times. Don't really know where that came from. Just came out.
I think I'd be quite hands-on. I think it would be quite hands-on. I think I'd have someone in a headlock, and 20 minutes later, someone would be saying, "I think you can let go now." It'd be one of those where it's just like, "Oh God, if that happened," I think that's probably what would happen, but it's not going to. So just in case anyone's watching this,
Yeah. 10 or 20 years time and someone's been killed. Didn't that guy say that he was gonna? Yeah. And if you were hypothetically murdered, who would you want to solve your case?
oh, that's an excellent question. Um, I think I think I'd go with Columbo because do you know what? It was on Channel 5 the other day. There was like a whole day of Columbo. That guy is ridiculous. If you something's happened, there's one as from like I think it was one of the reboot ones where they came back in like the 90s and it was all weird. Um, and it was one where this guy he'd won the lottery, and and then his uncle, he'd said to his uncle, he was going through a divorce, and he said to his uncle, "Can you claim the money for me? Because if I claim it, my wife, my soon to be ex wife, will get half." And the uncle, it turned out, was not a nice guy, and he killed him, but made it look like an accident. So for all intents and purposes, it was incredibly well done. Rip Torn was the killer. And it was incredibly well done. It was all, and I was like, "There's no way that anyone could even believe that that wasn't an accident." And Columbo comes in and goes, "Just one more thing, just." And I was like, "How does he even know that that's not an accident?" I just thought you just must go to every death and just go like, "Might be not be an accident." This, and it's like literally like you can we got on camera and he's like, "Oh, you don't know." So Columbo is like one of my favorite detective creations of all time. Failing that, it would be a Rebus or someone like that who, if you can get him out the pub long enough to solve the crime, he invariably does.
Yeah. What was your favourite first when as an author?
I think it was the first time I saw my book on the shelf of the Asda where I go to shop. So, and that happened like with Dead Gone. That was like it was about it was about a year after I signed the deal. And until that point, it wasn't really real until, and then the ebook came out weirdly like a month before the book came out. It still wasn't real. Um, and it wasn't until and I didn't even think about it because what happened was, is like the book came out and it was in my local Asda, but it turned out that's the same place that all my family shop as well. So they bought all the books. So I didn't see it. So for 2 weeks, it wasn't on the shelves because it kept getting bought. And I just happened to be walking down the book aisle doing the weekly shop, and I looked over, and there was my book, and it was kind of like oh shit, that's me, that's me. So probably that, either that or the very first event I did in Waterstones in Liverpool, um, because there was 100 people in there, and I think I was related to about 60% of them, and they were all sat there going like, "This is ridiculous." They're never going to read the book. They're not readers, but I've got a couple who actually turned into readers, but they were just happy. They were just happy that one of us had done something because we've been a family who are incredibly close, and have been incredibly unlucky over the years as well. Of like, we've nearly done that, we've nearly done this, and one of us did something. So it wasn't just for me; that was for all of us. That was like, and I said that on that night. I said like, this is all of our like success. This is for all of us because our name didn't exist in this country until like 1960. We weren't here, and now we are, and look where we've come in like 50 years. Um, and yeah, that was amazing. There's loads though. There's loads. The first huge train poster I got, which was in Liverpool Line Street Station, and the first time I saw it, I was coming back from doing an event somewhere. I think I was in Glasgow or something like that, and I get into Lime Street and it's 20 past 11, and there's no one there, and I look up and a big poster for the Bone Keeper is on the thing, And I just could have stood looking at it for like 10 minutes, going like, "This ain't real. This ain't real." We went back the next day with my wife and two kids, and there's a selfie of us standing with it in the background and stuff like that. But I think that was like 5 books in, and I think that's when the kids realised that, like, oh God, he isn't just going in and locking himself in a room and just like talking to himself. He is actually. So yeah, I still get excited about everything though. I get excited about doing anything, like, any events. So like, even just doing this is great for me. I love it. I love doing anything like where it makes it real. Because it's an incredibly solitary lifestyle to choose as a writer. And I'm quite outgoing, and I'm a show off. I like showing off. So for the last 10 years, I chose a profession where you don't do that for 90% of the time, you know. But it is a performance of sorts, writing a book. You kind of just go and, like, I think I'm interested enough for you to stick with me for 400 years, when 400 years, 400 pages, to listen to what I've got to say, which is quite, arrogant when you think about it. You've got to have that kind of thing within yourself where it's like, you are showing off a bit. You are like this, gather around, I'm going to tell you a story. Um, it's a confidence that you have to have, um, within you. But what I've learned is that a lot of writers are quite, shy, um, and they come out of their shells quite a lot when you stick them in front of an audience. The quietest writers I've ever met are also usually the best talking to an audience, because they've got interesting things to say because they haven't been listened to for a long time, and they've got really interesting things to say, and I love that. I love anything like that. Whereas me, I just go on stage, just tell jokes, and
And probably leads quite nicely to the Fun Life and Crime Writers. How did that come about?
that it's still the most ridiculous thing ever. So as I said earlier, I was a failed musician. It was one of those things where it's like, I wanted to be a footballer growing up, but so did every other lad in my area, and none of us made it. I think the highest level any of us ever got to was like, I think semi-pro, in like the 10th tier, um, and even that they were a sub. But the so I failed at that. I wanted to be a boxer, failed at that because I just didn't take it seriously enough, really. The level of dedication you have to put into that sport is just unreal. So it didn't. I wasn't good enough for that. And then I wanted to be an actor, but didn't get anywhere doing that, because it's another tough. Every industry I try to do it seems to be really difficult. um, so I was a musician, and I had bands. Was in bands for years. I did the pub circuit where I would just go out on my own and do like acoustic sets and stuff like that. And then I kind of stopped when I started writing. I think I did my last gig in a pub when I was about 26, 27. I paid 50 quid to sing, for 3 hours with a guitar, um, to an audience of like 6 people, and it's just heartbreaking. You just go, I can't be doing this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. So I stopped. Um, I saw, I think they were in a House of Blues in New Orleans. Mark Billingham, Stuart Neville, and Doug Johnston got up and did a set there. Now, I knew that Stuart was a guitarist, and I knew he was a very good guitarist. I didn't know about Mark. I knew Mark liked country music, and that was about it. Had no idea about Doug playing any instrument. But I watched that and I was like, yeah, that's good. And as luck would have it, a couple of months later, I was doing an event with Mark in Warstones in Liverpool. And after the event, we were stood in a pub, and he says to me, can you play bass or drums? And I thought very quickly. And I've always been told that if someone asks you a question, you should always say yes. If they ask you if you can do something, you should say yes, because you never know what might happen. He said, you can always back out later. So I thought very quickly, and I thought, well, I can't play drums. And I'd never played bass. Bass is a kind of a guitar, and I play guitar, so I'll just say bass. So I said, yeah, I can play bass. And he was like, that's good, because we've been asked to play Edinburgh Book Festival next year. And I was like, who's been asked? And he was like, well, the Stuart and Doug who got out with me at New Orleans at Bouchercon. um, and we're going to do like an author band and all this type of thing, and we need a bass player and a drummer. And I was like, okay, I'll play bass. That's no problem at all. Didn't think anything would come of it. 4 months later, I got an email where it's like, yeah, we're doing it, and like we've got Val McDermott is going to be the singer, and Chris Brookmeyer is going to come in and do a couple of songs. Stuart's going to play guitar. Doug's now going to play drums because he's played drums for ages. He just didn't want to play drums for some reason, and now he is the drummer. And he's a brilliant drummer. And like I'm going to learn guitar and all this. I was like, and so you play bass, don't you? I was like, oh yeah, I play bass. Don't worry about it. So at this point, he's saying, so we're going to have a rehearsal, and we need to come up with a load of songs. And we're going to do like a load of songs that are basically based on crime, like so we've already got two, and it's like, well, what's watching the detectives, and I fought the law. It's like, great, okay, we need a set though, don't we? Yeah, we're going to get more. So at this point, I still didn't own a bass guitar, and he said, right, so we're going to have a rehearsal. I said, well, look, let's have it. My dad does a lot of music shows and stuff like that, and he has a rehearsal room, so we can all meet here and we can all rehearse here. So in June, the gig was booked. The first gig was booked in August. Our first rehearsal was in June. So in June, I'd never met Val before. I knew Doug quite well from playing football. I knew Mark just because we'd become very friendly. Stuart I knew quite well just from festivals, but not more than that. I didn't know Chris really at all. And we all got together. I bought a bass like a month before and tried to learn it very quickly. And I learned the songs basically, but not really how to play them properly. But it was quite easy to pick up. And we had a first rehearsal, and I thought, just before we played the first song, I was like, this could go one or two ways. This could go really, really badly, and we'll have to cancel the gig and never speak of this again. Or it could go really, really well, and this could turn into something. And thankfully, it was the latter. We played. It helps that both Stuart and Doug and myself had all played in bands for years and years and years. We had a really good base of that. Like we know what we're doing. So that kind of is like the nucleus of the band is the drummer, the bass, and the guitarist was set. We knew what we were doing. I picked up the bass very, very quickly. It was, and that so we played, like, I thought, right, well, this is great. We'll get one gig and it'll be great. So we played Edinburgh 2 months after our first rehearsal, and it went down a storm. And then I think it was like just one of those things where it's like people weren't expecting us to be that good, and we turned out to be not as shit as you think we would be. And people were like, oh, so they can do it. So then all of a sudden, we were being asked to play different festivals. Different book festivals are like, this is interesting, because not only do we get a great show at the end, like on a Saturday night, but we also get all of these offers for individual events as well. So we started getting asked to do different festivals to the point where we were doing 10, 12 a year before COVID. But it culminated in us playing Glastonbury Festival, which is still the most amazing thing ever. I remember that day. I'll remember that day on my deathbed. I'll be talking about that. Is that we played Glastonbury Festival, and we stood there backstage, and I'm like, "This is the greatest thing ever." They're all really nervous, and I'm bouncing. And like, aren't you nervous? And I'm like, "No, this is the best thing ever." And I was on stage going like, "Yeah, we should. Yeah, of course of course we're at the Glastonbury," because everything that had happened in the 2 years before that was ridiculous enough so that I didn't feel it was ridiculous that we were out playing Glastonbury Festival, because we're a bunch of writers who were all basically wannabe rock stars, who half the band had done bands before. Yes, Val had sang with folk bands and stuff like that, but years and years and years ago, we were very much like, this is a laugh. This is just a laugh. We're just enjoying this, and it became something that each of us just looked forward to more than book events. Would be like, right, we'll get the book event out the way and then we can play. It's that kind of thing. So when COVID hit, we had 4 or 5 gigs lined up. We were going to do a tour, and COVID hit in like about 3 weeks before the first gig, and we had to cancel all those gigs. So for 18 months, we only ever saw each other on Zoom, and that was hard. So Bloody Scotland last year, when we finally got back together, I was worried. It's been a long time since we played together. Um, we could have lost everything. And the first moment in the rehearsal room, it was like, oh, it's normal, it's back to normal. And we had a great gig, and now we've got a load of stuff planned for this year. It's all coming back. We're incredibly lucky. Um, but it is just, I think what makes the band so much fun for an audience is that we don't take it seriously. We are a party band. We're not writing our own music. We're not writing our own songs. That was one of the first things that we made sure that we were all agreed about. We are not going to start writing our own songs because that's where it'll all fall apart. When we start taking it too seriously and think that we're going to have, like, if we start doing album cover shoots, that's when we know we've gone wrong. If we start, like, that's ridiculous. So it was like, no, we're a party band and we're there for having a good time. We want to have a good time, and if we're having a good time, the audience will have a good time as well. And it's something different. It's something that hasn't really been around at book festivals, and I think book festivals are fantastic, and some of them are made only better by those that take chances and have these kind of events on where they're just something a little bit different. And we'll talk about books for as long as as long as you want us to, but we want you to have a good time as well, because then you'll go away from the festival thinking, I want to go back there because I had a great weekend or I had a great night there, and that's what we're about. And yeah, long may it continue, because it's one of my favorite things to do is to get up on stage and have and play songs that I've never heard of. But there was a point in time where the entire set list was made up of about 20 songs that were all released before I was born. And it was a standing joke that, like I'm like 10. I think the next oldest person in the band is 12 years older than me. So I'm like the baby. It's great because I'm the oldest of all my brothers and sisters. I've got an older sister, but I'm the oldest lad, and everyone just deems me to be the oldest somehow. I don't know how that worked out. But I'm the baby, so it's great to be the baby of the band, and it's like, but it's just a great experience. It's a great kind of, and it's a great. Everyone who's ever seen us will know we're just about having fun. It's just fun. We're not taking ourselves seriously whatsoever. We're not coming out in costume. We don't have elaborate set pieces. It's like, it's make sure that the lasers work properly and none of that stuff. But we'll have a good time. That's what it's about.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I saw you at Bloody Scotland, and it was the best night. Absolutely, 100%. I was buzzing when I walked back to my guest room. And then I quite liked the next night when you sort of done a pared down more.
Oh, yeah.
That was really nice as well. And God, they ripped the piss out of you as well for being the youngest. And it's hilarious.
Because there was a thing, there's been a running joke that, like, about the fact that I'm the youngest, and like I just want to do, what I deem to be, young people music, which it's turned out to be Britney.
Yeah.
But where that comes from is very interesting. Is that I I used to do the Hit Me Baby One More Time when I used to do the pub circuit, because I heard Travis do it years and years and years ago. And I remember I didn't want to do anything like that again, though. When I became a writer, I didn't want to do anything like that. And we were doing Bloody Scotland, and the Curly Coo had that thing on a Saturday night where it was like all the authors would get up and do a turn. So they either write, read a poem or sing a song or anything like that. Craig Robertson, who kind of runs it, a really good friend of mine, he knew that I had this past as a pub singer type of thing, and he was always on at me to get up and do something. And one year I was like, I got up, and Doug was singing "World in Motion," the World Cup 1990 song, and he said, I need someone to do the John Barnes rap to the crowd, and instantly about 40 people looked at me because I'm the only Scouser there. Even though John Barnes was not a Scouser, but he played for Liverpool, so like I had to get up and do the John Barnes rap. You've got to hold and do all that. As I'm stood there, we did it. It all went down. Everyone's laughing their heads off, and Craig turns to me and says, "You're gonna do something then?" And I had 20 seconds to think, and maybe less. And I thought I don't want to do something fucking serious and do like Damien Rice or Radiohead or whatever like I used to, all that kind of crap. But I had in the back of my head, I was like, I've got the Britney song. I could do that. I haven't done it in ages, but I could do that because it'd be quite funny. So I did this whole thing about like making out like that it was an old Scottish folk ballad that Travis did and all this stuff. I started doing it, and like it went down an absolute storm. Like doing the high bits and all that kind of thing. So when we were doing Funnel and Crime Writers, that didn't exist. Me doing Britney, the gigs didn't exist for like the first like year. I was doing gigs. It was just became like there was a joke during doing Blockbuster. Mark did, and it was like it'd be funny if I shouted out like I want to do Britney Spears and stuff like that, and he was like, yeah, I'll be that funny. And what if I came on at the end and actually did Britney Spears? And they were like, that'd be funny. So I started doing it, and they would stop me and all that type of thing. But it's when you think about it, like, Hit Me Baby One More Time came out 22 years ago. So it's not exactly current. So as much as I'm the baby of the band, my musical taste still go back 20 odd years. It's not like I'm getting up and doing The Weekend, it's like so
Yeah, start doing Sia or Kesha or something, I don't know.
And Marie, I don't think it would go down as well as the Britney one though.
No, there is something about Britney anyway, isn't it? It is just funny before you even, yeah, it is. It's hilarious.
That's the point where like I made a joke of like on stage and something like I want to do 2 hours of Britney. Someone came to me afterwards and was like, you should do that. You should do like a 2-hour Britney tribute show where it's just you just singing Britney songs. And I was like, listen, I this is too far. The joke lasts for 3 minutes and then that's it. 2 hours of me getting up.
Yeah.
It would get very, very like, what is he doing? Lucas lost it.
It's finally all got to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny when I asked Mark if he wanted to come back for an interview. It's like, oh yeah, I can't do it that week, so we're just touring Canada. Right, okay, fair enough. As you do.
Yeah, it's all got a bit strange. We had a gig lined up in April 2020 at the Queen's Hall in Glasgow. It was a huge thing. We'd sold 700 tickets or something like that, and they got cancelled like a couple of weeks before. So when we like did Bloody Scotland and things started getting a bit better, we were like, great, we can start planning ahead. We can do these things again. And then obviously we had like another situation in the winter where it's like, oh god, it's gonna hold us back. But thankfully, next month in April we're Queen's Hall in Glasgow again, and we've sold I think about the same amount of tickets for that. And yeah, we're doing Ullapool and yeah, Canada is on the schedule and a few other bits in here and there. And it just keeps going and going, and it's like it's great. I was worried during all the lockdowns and everything like that that it may not, the appetite may have gone for it, or like people go, oh yeah, we've seen that now though, we want something different. But thankfully we've kept that kind of core audience of like who would still want to see us and have a good time.
Yeah, despite living way down in Bedfordshire, I would, if I could afford to, come to Glasgow and see her because it's just fun. If you were able to spend a day with any author, dead or alive, who would you like to spend a day with?
That's a good question. I think it would be Stephen King, because it would have to be someone I don't get to spend days with anyway. I really enjoy the company of like the friends that I have in crime fiction. It's one of the greatest things that I think I've gained through all this, is like, aside from like readers and things like that, which is the main thing, but the friendships that I've created over the years with other writers and things is amazing. But I get to see them all the time, so it's not them. It would be someone I don't get to see. It'd be Stephen King, who I would just sit there and just say, please, can you just talk? And I might absorb some kind of magic, it's like, just some.
Yeah, anything, please, just anything.
If I would ask Stephen about the writing process that he has or anything like, I think it would just be like, tell me your life story. Just tell me how you felt during this. Tell me what you were going through in your life when you wrote this book, or And tell me about, like, like that kind of thing would be, I think, more interested in, like, like, so when you're moving from, your second act into your third act, would what kind of process do you use? I'm not interested in that. I just want to know about him, how he was feeling, because I know when I'm writing certain books, like I can say, like, I'm pointing to certain things in my books where like, someone will say, like, the bit where this happens in the six, or this bit happens and you never said goodbye, or this. I know what was in my head when I was going through that and writing that bit. Um, I know what I was feeling, and I would be interested to find out what someone like a Stephen King, who's been doing it for 50 years, was feeling during certain books.
Yeah, because he's had quite a life anyway, hasn't he? He's a drug addict and his accident and stuff. Yeah.
He's an he's incredibly interesting man, I think. Um, to have a career that lasts this long and still be reinventing himself now. I mean, he just did a series of crime novels. It's like he could just quite happily just go, like, right, what's the most supernatural thing I can think of today? He's not doing that. He's still trying to do certain different things, and like, yeah, I'm a huge fan. Um, but there's a number of authors that I would love to just spend a little bit of time with. I never got to meet Mo Hader, which it really upsets me that, like, that I will never get the chance to either. Mo Hader's I was a huge fan, massive massive fan. She was an incredible writer. Um, One of the most, like, I can't say underrated, because she was really rated as a writer, but I don't think she was as well known as she deserved to be in comparison to other books. Um, she was unbelievable. What an incredible talent! What she did with crime novels was ridiculously, just ridiculously good. And I always wanted to meet her, and sadly I came onto the scene when she basically stopped doing events, um, and stopped doing everything, in public. Um, and so I never got to meet her. And now I won't, which is, so when that news broke, I was, incredibly sad about it, because you kind of you do have these kind of, like, authors that you look up to, and like, still even now, it's like I'm friends with some of the biggest selling writers in British crime, so I still look up to them in certain ways, but then there are others where it's like they're even on a, like, put them on a pedestal, and like she was definitely one of those where it's like I'd love to have met her and spent some time with her. So it would be Stephen King or Mo Hader.
If you're able to travel to any period of time, either forwards or backwards, where would you go?
Forwards. I just want to find out, uh, just stupid things. I want to find out, like, what happens at the. I'm always eager to find out what happens, like, so just just in general, of just, like, like, what are my kids gonna do in their later life? How are they, like, if they have kids, so they, what they're doing and everything like that. I'd like to move forward in time, like 100 years, and just see what's happening with them, but then just to find out what's happening in the world. The world is in such a constant state of flux at the moment. It's like you don't know where this ends. Since 2015, it feels like we're all living in a dream. It's like, like, everything that we didn't expect to happen has happened. Everything that was, like, not supposed to happen, according to experts, happened. And, like, so it's like, that's that. I want to know what the end point of that is. I want to know what happens if climate change does make us all have to live like we're in Kevin Costner in Waterworld, or if it's, it all gets sorted out. If, like, just different thing. I'm always wanting to know things so I'm not interested in the past so much in that sense. But I've always said, like, I'd like to know if I could go back. If I could go back and just hop around, because there's so many mysteries in life, or conspiracy theories in the past, where it's like, I'd just like to know if it was Lee Harvey Oswald who killed JFK. I'd just like to know, that kind of thing. Like, it's like, what was going on there, like that kind of thing. What was really the story there? Just things like that. But what happened to, like, just, like, just mysteries in life that we'll never know the answer to. Um, did we, like I know we went to the moon, but just how did that happen? Like, just like, what were they thinking? What was it like in that capsule when they landed on the moon? It was like Neil Armstrong, just like when the mic wasn't on, turning into like Buzz Aldrin and going like, I don't want to do it. You do it. Like, I just imagine they were like shitting themselves of like, like, or like Neil Armstrong just sitting there going like, just don't screw it up. Don't say something stupid when you say it, because you're the first person who's going to do this, and in your word, can you imagine the pressure? But I'd be like the person sitting there going like, don't fuck it up. But it's like, yeah, so it's just stuff like that. But now I'm much more interested in what's to come than what's been before. I'm much more interested in what's to come. So yeah, I'd like to just jump forward and just see how everyone's doing. Is everyone okay?
Yeah, I'm too scared to know the answer to that question. I'd definitely go back. The future scares me.
I quite like the idea though of just checking in like 100 years, because life would be so much different. Because you think about like what life was like 100 years ago now, 1922, 20. It's very different than 2022. It's like I want to know. The biggest thing for me is I want to know what the natural endpoint of social media is, because this is only a new thing. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, all of these things didn't exist 10, 15 years ago. I remember MySpace was like the big thing 15 years ago. Facebook, I didn't join until what, 2009? This is all in our lifetime, like of very short period of time that we've had all these. Twitter, 10 years ago. What's the natural endpoint of these things? Because MySpace was a huge thing, and no one thought that was going to disappear. AOL chat rooms were the next big thing in the 90s, and that disappeared. At some point, I think that these companies do disappear. It's what replaces them. That's what's the worrying thing. So like I want to know, but I want to know like how it is, because it has affected discourse in life to such an extent that that what replaces it is what is interesting to me. It's like what replaces like the anonymity of trolling. Like if you've suddenly got to show your passport before you have a Twitter account, like how does that change things? Things like that interest me. Of like, what's the next point of time? Are we going to get to the point where it's like some of those books that we read where it's like with a surveillance state, and like everyone knows everything and everything like that, or do they just wither and die and we have a different type of discourse? I don't know. That's the kind of thing that interests me. That's the kind of thing I think about at 3 o'clock in the morning when I try and go to sleep.
Who was your first celebrity crush?
My first
Celebrity crush.
literary crush.
Celebrity crush.
Celebrity crush. Oh, I should probably know this. It was me. I think it was Louise Nerding, as she was then. She became Louise Redknapp. I think she still goes by Louise Redknapp, by the way. I think she still goes by Louise Redknapp.
Yeah.
I think that was like, what, 98, 97, 98? I think it was her or Mel C from Spice Girls. I thought Mel C was at least local enough for it to be, so I might have a chance. I did not have a chance. But yeah, they were Louise Nerding. I remember I was quite hung up on Louise Nerding. I remember she was supposed to do a signing in Liverpool, at like the HMV there or something like that, and my dad took me over, like what, 13, 14 at this time. And my dad's like, right, we'll go over, and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna meet Louise and she'll meet me and all that type of thing. And it turned out we had the wrong day completely, and I never got to see her. She'd been the week before. But yeah, I think it would be her. I think that would be who it was. I don't have many celebrity crushes though. I'm very weird in that sense. Of I don't have like I didn't growing up. I didn't really have many crushes or anything like that. I was too busy like talking to girls who are real.
Way to do it, to be fair. What superhero power would you have?
Invisibility all day long. Invisibility. I want to. I want to hear what people say when I'm not around. Not even just about me, just people being themselves without, like, what I feel. I've always had that kind of like Truman Show type of mentality of like everyone's just putting on a performance for me. They're not really who they are. Um, so like I've always had this thing in the back of my head. It's like, oh, they're probably very different at home, and that's what I want to find out. What is, like when Mark Billingham is sitting in his living room in his pants, what's he really like? What's he saying to his wife and his kids and all that? How's he really talking? Does he go? Is he go? Like Jacob Rees-Mogg is the big one for me. Does he go home, take the top hat off, put the monocle away, and go like, like, right, kids, you all right there, lads? You all right? I just imagine, like these people who, like, like, is Boris Johnson completely competent in his actual personality? That can, like that kind of thing where it's like the when the public mask slips, that's the kind of thing I'd want to. So it's not just about like what the people say about me when I'm not around. It's not really about that. I want to know what they're really like when no one's watching. Which is probably going to get me on some kind of list.
Is it weird that I think Mark is probably exactly the same? Like, I literally can't see him being any different ever.
I've never met anyone. I've been incredibly close friends with Mark for a number of years now. I've never met anyone who's so completely comfortable in his own skin of who he is and happy. And so he should be, because he's an incredible guy. And like, he's one of my very closest friends. And he is just a really nice guy. And yeah, he is one of the most. He's just incredibly comfortable with who he is. He's done so much in his life, and we come from a similar background, Mark and I. Like he came from like a very working class background, and got on TV, got into books, became a bestseller. He's had books of his turn into TV series. He's had incredible success, but he'll still ring me to talk about like just stupid shit. Like it's just like I remember I remember getting really annoyed because he was over in America when the Beatles documentary came out. The Get Back documentary. And he's ringing me going like, "Have you watched it then?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I can't believe you watched it." Like, it's like, yeah, he is just someone who's incredible. Yeah, so that probably doesn't change and at all. Like he doesn't change at all. And but it is like that idea of like, but what if he does? What if at home he's just like this really narky bastard who's just like sitting there like, fuck everyone. Apologies for the language.
So a while ago, we mentioned that you had a new book out. Do you have it to hand that you can show off?
Yes, it's here. You never said goodbye. Look at the nice things that people say about it. Enthralling and emotional. It's yeah. It's the first time I've been in hardback actually. Book 8 is the first time I've been in hardback. And there is something about a hardback that makes you feel like it's when you get this. Where is it? It's when you get the little flap at the back. There's a little picture of you. That's when you know you've made it.
They're taken in Scotland.
No, that was taken in in an alleyway near Penny Lane, Liverpool. Yeah, I get all the good places, me.
So you have that out now. Are you working on anything at the moment, and what's coming next for you?
Yeah, so the next book I'm working on at the moment, I can't say too much about it because I don't know what would be a spoiler or not. You see, at this point, that's an issue with writing a book. There's no title or anything for it. It's like it's one of those very early on in the process, but that'll be out next year. So I've got plenty of time in my head to get all that boxed off. But yeah, it'll be another book set in the US with an English protagonist. Something that I'm like kind of doing at the moment is, going for that bigger landscape type of book. Very Linwood Barclay, very Harlan Coben type of book. I'm enjoying writing this kind of book a lot.
And what festivals can we expect to see you at this year?
All of them. I'll be at all of them. I think Harrogate's in July. Ullapool is in May. I think Butte Noir comes back this year. I'll be there. Bloody Scotland, I'll be there. I think anything that I can do, I will be doing, because I'd spent 2 years doing nothing but Zooms, which is great. One of the biggest things that I did during lockdown was the Locked Up Festival. I did that twice, where we raised 25 grand for the Trussell Trust, and we did 3 days of events twice. And hearing from people who don't usually get to book festivals and got to be part of one was the greatest feeling ever. As I've ever, it's just brilliant. Of like people who are like, look, I'm unable to go to festivals either due to cost or access, and people who are disabled and things like that, and they were able to become part of the community because people were talking in the comments every event, and that was brilliant. That was excellent. But for me, it was like, that's great. I'd like to do that and in-person ones as well. I'd like to see people again. I spent 2 years not seeing anyone, to the point where I was like, do people even exist anymore? They could just be figments of my imagination. These could all be computer programs on my screen on this Zoom.
Yeah, I'd get to think where a writer's mind would take that.
Exactly. So I'll be doing as many as possible. I've already booked to do quite a few this year. I'm sure more will be coming down the pipe, because as things start coming back to a new kind of normal, I think we'll see lots and lots of events coming back.
Goodness, I'm going to as many as I can as well, which isn't that many, but still plenty, because they're really expensive.
They are expensive.
Especially because I live way down south, and all of the festivals are just miles away. All of them.
I remember doing Harrogate. The first time I did Harrogate, the Theakston's Festival, I went as an unpublished writer. I didn't know anyone or anything like that, and I spent 500 quid for 3 days on a hotel and tickets. I got a ticket to every single panel. I spent way over, but it was money I just did not have. But I used like a student loan to do it, and I went, and it was like that's great. I could not be happier that now I don't have to pay that, because it is prohibitive to a lot of people. So but there are a lot of festivals who do say that. Bloody Scotland do reduce ticket prices and things like that. And there are ways where you don't have to stay in the festival hotel, that type of thing. But it's always great to see, to go to these festivals and spend 3 days with a whole load of people who are all into the same thing as you. They're all there for the same reason as you.
Yeah.
They all love books, and they love talking about books and talking to the people who write the books and the people who publish the books and the people who edit the books and do the book covers and all that kind of everything. It's such a glorious celebration of the industry that I'm so lucky to be a part of.
Yeah, it was funny when I went last year to Harrogate, the first time I'd ever been, and I knew one person, but because I do these, she was like, and other people were like, oh, you'll know everybody because you do these, and I just didn't. We said we're going to get a book with faces and names so that we can place people, but just hope that the photos aren't out of date, because you lot are just,
no one looks the same in their social media pictures as they do in real life.
Then you have bloody pseudonyms and stuff, and oh my god, honestly, it's so confusing. Mean is what it is. I'm still trying to nail Simon Koenig down, not literally, for an interview as well. He promised me at Harrogate last year, and it's nearly the end of February. I shall be having severe words with him.
You should do.
I will. I told him off at Harrogate, so even though I was like, hello, he's so tall. Yeah, he was laughing, so I was telling Chris Whitaker off, and I was like, well, actually, and he was like, oh, yeah, it was great. Well, I don't have any more questions for you unless you think there's anything I haven't asked you about that you want to tell us.
No, just that the book is out now, available in good bookshops on Amazon and ebook, and the paperback comes out in July. But yeah, I'm very, very proud of this book. It's a very personal book. It's very emotional, but it's page turning as well. So yeah, if you haven't read me before, start with that one because it's the best one. Because the newest one is always the best one.
Awesome. Well, I shall bring in a copy to have you sign at Harrogate anyway, and I look forward to meeting you.
Thanks very much.
And if anyone wants to find out about you, where can they do so?
I'm on social media. You can follow me on Twitter at Luca Veste, or on Facebook. I'm Luca Veste on there. My website is under construction, but that's lucaveste.co.uk. Under construction at this point means Luca hasn't got around to doing it yet.
You know, it's fine. We're aware of your little quirks. It's all good. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.